The first three.
3-1.
I know what you're talking about. See, because I know the first three championships were the best championships. This was the ultimate test, getting by the Detroit Pistons that had the Bulls numbers for years.
Who did y'all play in the NBA championship?
Magic Johnson, one of the best point guards, the best sports dynasties ever.
Okay.
Played Clyde Drexler,
That don't count.
Terry Porter, Buck Williams,
That
Kevin
don't count.
Duckworth.
That don't count.
One of the fiercest Portland teams they ever had.
Did anything? Now let's go to what I'm talking about. Played Seattle, Sean Kemp, Gary Payton, Dale Ellis.
Those were good teams, but isn't that the same Seattle team that lost in 5 games to the Denver Nuggets the year before?
And then we had to play against Karl Malone and John Stockton.
I was getting ready to say, because I was going to go to Charles Barkley next.
Yeah,
Sir Charles and Kevin Johnson and Dan Marley.
They not like Charles Barkley.
Danny Ainge.
He was washed up. no, my Danny.
Danny, you heard what he said about you, Danny?
He was washed up. Your 3-peat was pretty good, but our 3-peat was just like a rock star team. We are like the Beatles. We are like the. Did y'all have 3,000, 5,000 fans standing outside y'all hotel?
Hey, listen, we landed in Cleveland at 2 a.m. in the morning in a
200
snowstorm, and they
people.
were packed just to catch a glimpse of us as we walked from the bus into the lobby of the hotel.
Did y'all have police escorts during the regular season? We have police escorts.
We never had police
escorts in regular season going to New York, the Plaza Hotel, 1:30, gets off the bus. It's 5,000 people standing outside. PJ, Rod, man.
I'll give
like
you
the Beatles.
I'll give you
You
your
know
police
what? We should
escort.
have walked across the street and just paused. So they did bless of us.
All right, I'll give you that one.
See, so I can't, we're gonna leave both 3-peat as a dynasty. And it's the greatest of all time.
I like that.
How that sound?
That sounds perfect.
Hey, neither one, but we just Bull Nation.
3-peat.
3-peat. Don't tell nobody we did that.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us for this special edition of Legends Live from the National Basketball Retired Players Association. What you just watched was an entertaining debate about the first dance versus the last dance between Chicago Bulls legends Scott Williams and Ron Harper. The 3-peat of 91, 92, and 93 versus that 3-peat of 96, 97, and 98. Joining us tonight to expand on this debate and share some very special Chicago Bulls and Michael Jordan memories is 15-year NBA legend and 3-time NBA champion with those Chicago Bulls, Scott Williams. Scott, take it away.
Well, thank you, Bridget, and thank you, Legends Live, for having me on. Ron and I had a blast doing that last summer and really keeping the spirit of Chicago Bulls Nation and the championships going. He's a great guy, and anytime I have a chance to sit down and talk with Ron, I really enjoy it. And I always try to tell Ron, I said, the second 3-peat was fantastic. I mean, the talent on those teams, you can't argue, probably one of the best assembled basketball squads of all time. But talent is not what the recipe for success truly is. It's really a mental basketball game. And before you can do it on the floor, you have to get by that mental barrier. And that's where we set the roadmap for that second 3-peat by getting by the Detroit Pistons with the first 3-peat. And that was the biggest challenge. I was undrafted coming into the 90-91 season. And when I got to Chicago, the cry was from the coaching staff that we have got to have the best record in the Eastern Conference playoffs so we would have home court advantage when we faced the Detroit Pistons in the conference championships. And we worked our tails off every day from the opening practice and training camp to the final walkthrough before the Game 5 of the Los Angeles Lakers series in the NBA playoffs that year. Michael Jordan was coming on as the best player in the NBA in 1991, and by far the most popular player. But the knock on MJ was he could score a lot of points, but he hasn't been able to win a championship ring yet. So you can't put him in the category of both Larry Bird and Magic Johnson. So Mike wanted to be the best player to ever play the game. And he knew in order to accomplish that, he had to get a championship ring. So he was hell-bent from that opening week of practices. He went harder than anybody I had ever seen. The competitive spirit in which this guy performed one-on-one, two-on-two, and five-on-five drills was like nothing I had ever witnessed at any level of sports before. I think maybe the one thing that MJ and Phil couldn't agree upon was when to have Michael dial it down, because he just doesn't have that ability to ratchet back that competitive spirit. It's almost a sickness. I know as he's retired in years past, he probably doesn't see it that way. But back then, the way that he would attack guys physically and mentally that had to face off against him, whether it be a teammate in practice or an opponent in a game, was just relentless. I often get asked, who's the better player between LeBron James and Michael Jordan? And my answer is they're both fantastic players, but Michael had a gear that LeBron and other greats of the Hall of Fame didn't possess. And that was that it didn't matter if he had scored 35 points in the Gardens against the Knicks the night before and was going to play the Charlotte Hornets the next day. He would make sure that everybody in the arena and everybody on that floor he was competing against realized that they were going up against the baddest player to ever wear a pair of basketball shoes. And that was always what impressed me so much when people talk about the legendary competitiveness of Michael Jordan, is that he wanted everybody in the stands, everybody on the court to realize they just witnessed the best basketball player they'd ever seen. And so that was so refreshing to me. We went through that regular season like a team possessed. We crushed lesser opponents. We ground out games against the quality teams in the Eastern Conference and the Western Conference on to 61 wins that year. Hadn't been a team that had won that many games in a long time, certainly not ever in the Chicago Bulls franchise. So we were quite proud of that record going into the first round of the playoffs. And you would think the intensity would stay about the same, but it ratcheted up even more from there, from the playoffs. Phil Jackson was coming on as one of the better young coaches in the NBA. He had us all on the same page, but he even took his preparation to a new level once it came to playoffs. It was the physicality, preparing for the playoffs became more intense in practice. The attention to details, the scouting reports, player personnel, everybody was required to know everyone's player tendencies. You were quizzed on it, and we were prepared. We only lost one game on our road to the NBA Finals that year, and we did have the home court advantage against the Detroit Pistons. And it was a great situation because we took the first two games at home, giving us a lot of confidence to go into Auburn Hills, a place that held a new arena that held 20,000, a monstrosity of an arena back then in the early 90s. And their fans, the two-time defending champs, were ready to brawl after having lost the two games in Chicago, and it became a bloodbath out there on the floor. But when you got the best player on a mission, and a renewed Scottie Pippen, who was coming on, just as you could tell as the season continued to go, we knew we had the upper hand, and the tactics that they had used in the past to rattle both Pippen and Jordan were no longer working as we went on to win them in 4 games. And I remember as the game was winding down, we thought that after we swept them that we would get congratulated by the Pistons team, but they snuck off the court prior to the final whistle. We never did get that handshake at center court. But then it was on to face the Los Angeles Lakers, which was a dream come true for me. because I grew up in Los Angeles and watched the Lakers with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Magic Johnson, James Worthy, Byron Scott. Now I'm out competing against these guys in the NBA Finals. So it was the best of both worlds, playing back in Los Angeles in front of family and friends, going from an undrafted rookie and finishing the deal with the NBA championship. Bridget?
Scott, thank you again so much for joining us this evening. We already have some great questions coming in, but the first thing that I wanted to talk to you about, you referenced just a little bit ago that you were undrafted coming into the NBA, and I don't think people realize you were an early 20-something. It was your rookie season. You win a championship with the best NBA player ever, and it's Chicago's first Bulls championship. So have you even digested that yet at this point in your life? That's what a way to start out with a bang going into the NBA.
Yeah, it really was. I was excited. I was young. I got a little bit of the rookie treatment from the veterans, and had the responsibilities of carrying ball bags and racking balls before practice. Of course, some of the guys would like to kick those balls into the upper levels of the arenas on the road, have to go run up the stairs, grab them, try to run back down and get into the huddle while Phil Jackson's explaining what we were going to be doing. There was a projector we had to carry, or I had to carry, being the only rookie. Weighed about 25 pounds. It was this old reel-to-reel deal, and we didn't even use it anymore. We were already on to VHS tapes by then, but I guess the guys in the 70s, the rookies in the 70s had to carry it, so I got stuck carrying it in the 90s as well, cleaning up the film session, running after the film sessions, running vacuum cleaners, all those kinds of things. But it was great. I had a great bunch of guys that brought me into the league. I couldn't ask for better teammates.
Yeah, and we have some images for all the viewers. We're going to be showing some pictures that Scott has shared with us to help paint the picture as he takes us down memory lane. We'll also be getting to your questions. Helikoff, we see you on Twitter. We know you have a great question, and I'll ask Scott that later. But Scott, walk us through this amazing picture that you posted the other day.
Yeah, I love The Last Dance. I'm watching it like everybody else, and I was going through some of my archives and my photos. This one was taken, and I'm not quite sure what year it was. I know we were in the training room, and I'm not sure if we were in the training room of our practice facility at that point, the Sherry Berto Center. But it looks like we were about to go onto the floor, and you can see there the guys that really taught me how to be pros, MJ, Cartwright and Paxson. I mean, those guys put the pro and professional, and they passed that on to me, allowed me to play 15 years in the NBA. Scotty and Horace, those guys were fantastic. They taught me the ropes of the game, what it was like to be the lifestyle of an NBA player, and go out and have some fun, but also be able to get your rest and be able to perform. And then BJ, Will, and that picture, not pictured, is Stacey King. Those were my three road dogs. We were the youngest players on the squad. We always kind of hung together on road trips, catching movies, breaking bread, grabbing a beer, having some fun, maybe even catching a movie out on the road. So a great group of guys. I couldn't ask for, I guess, a better group to set the tone for what it was going to be like for me in the NBA.
Of course, an amazing group. And once again, I'm just astounded at how that was your rookie season. So you really started out on the right foot there in the NBA. Let's talk about another person who had such an influence on you and your Chicago Bulls teammates. We're talking about this guy right here.
Yeah, Phil Jackson, the Zen Master. I was fortunate throughout my basketball life to have many really good coaches, but especially two Hall of Fame coaches, and Dean Smith in college at North Carolina. And then I move on to Phil Jackson with the Chicago Bulls. Phil was just the master at being able to dissect a player's game, understanding a player's weaknesses and also knowing about their strengths. And he always puts you in a position to maximize your strengths, yet minimize your weaknesses. And as a player, you can ask for no more. I don't know if I always appreciated it when I was a young player. I always thought I want more minutes, I want more. But sometimes there were certain matchups from a standpoint of size or speed that I just wasn't going to be the best player to be on that floor at that particular time. And Coach Jackson recognized those, or a top style of play. So whether it was Stacy or myself or Will or Bill or Horace all competing for minutes in that position, Coach Jackson always realized what was best for us to make us look good. And the triangle offense, too, for a player that is not offensively talented like myself, I could still be part of the offense through other means, whether it was reading the defense with a back pick, knowing which way to swing the basketball. You didn't feel like you were isolated on an island and stuck to play, watch them play 3-on-3 basketball on the other half of the court.
Yeah, and we actually have a really great picture that kind of, I know it's not your favorite, but it really illustrates the fact that you are not stuck on an island. And that's this gem right here with your teammate.
I don't remember. Oh, sorry, Bridget, I didn't mean to cut you off. I seemed like I was always knocked to the floor. I remember I saw this picture and I had to post it because those are my buddies right there. I mean, they were always looking out for me, Scotty and Horace, like I said, and here they are picking me up off the floor. I want to say I took a charge on Magic Johnson or some Hall of Fame player to get the ball back for a team, and that's why they're helping me back up. If I would have made a mistake, they probably would have left me on the ground to get up myself.
You definitely took that, Scott. That's the story that we'll tell. So, you know, it's great to see how your teammates were with you. And we have a question from one of our viewers that I think will be really interesting to get your insight on. And I'm going to show it up here. But he would like to know, or she, from your 3 championships, which one was more challenging for you guys on the bench?
Oh, excellent question. The first championship, I want to say, was difficult because you'd never been there before. We didn't quite know what to expect. You're going against just a legendary franchise in the Los Angeles Lakers with the guy who's been carrying the mantle as the premier basketball player in the league in Magic Johnson. That was special. Like I said, being from Los Angeles made it even more special. But the problem for the Lakers were they were beat up by the time they got to the finals. Byron Scott was injured. James Worthy was busted up. Even some of their guys on the bench had were limited with the amount of time that they could play. They were end up playing a couple rookies as well that had to step up, and they did. But you know, it's not the same as having your go-tos. So for me, the second championship against the Portland Trailblazers was the true test. To me, that team was completely loaded, top to bottom. Their bench was strong as well. He brought Uncle Cliffy off the bench, along with a number of other big guys. They had Buck Williams was on that bench, and Kevin Duckworth, another big bruising 7-foot, close to 300-pound center that we had to wrestle with. So they presented a lot of challenges in the front court. And then in the back court, they were just as tough with Terry Porter and Clyde.
Well, everybody, it looks like we might have lost Scott, but we really appreciate you all tuning in tonight to hear Scott Williams' take on the first dance versus the last dance. And I think we have him back.
Little technical difficulty on my end. Sorry, Bridget. But the second championship was probably, I guess, the most fulfilling championship for me because I knew that after I had played in the NBA Finals, I played in the conference finals, I had made a name for myself. I knew that that's when I was going to stick in this league, and I could play for as long as I wanted at that point if my body was healthy. I knew that even as an undrafted player, I knew that at that point that's where I was going to be able to make it in this league.
Wonderful. Thank you for answering that viewer question. To touch on a little bit about The Last Dance, which I think got record ratings last week. We're all really excited about episodes 3 and 4 coming up in just such a little bit. You were still competing against the Bulls at that time. I believe you were at the Sixers. Yeah. And what has, in watching The Last Dance last week, was there anything that surprised you or maybe you had forgotten about, or something that when you saw it, you went, Yep, I'll never forget that. Share some insights into you watching The Last Dance.
I'm watching as a fan because it really is cool. I was gone from Chicago. Jordan, after the '94 season, went and played baseball. I was offered a longer-term deal to come to Philadelphia, so I didn't really know a whole lot was going on. They were kicking butt and taking names, going on to those 7-2 wins. But for me to be able to see the access that this film crew was able to get right before the team would take the floor for a basketball game or on the team bus and in the locker rooms, that's access that most people can't get. At least back in the 90s, you weren't able to get that type of access. There's no footage of those moments. Now with the NBA and social media, people want more and more access, and I think they've been able to get more and more access over the years. But back in the day, those were the special moments of Phil Jackson, talking to the team prior to them leaving the locker room to take the floor. The guys getting together, huddling up, and one guy on the Bulls yells, "What time is it?" And they all yell, "Game time." I mean, that was my job. I was the "what time is it" guy. So those are the kind of things that help me bring back some of the special memories.
That's fantastic. And what a job to have to be that guy. I would like to wrap up with one final viewer question. It's special because it comes all the way from Australia. So we would like to know, was it true that Michael Jordan was somehow involved with getting you to be a Tar Heel?
Yeah, that is true. So when I was undrafted coming out of North Carolina, being a Tar Heel, Jordan used to come back in the summers and work out with some of the current players and then some of the other pros that would come back in the summertime to play with us, which is a huge advantage if you're a college kid, being able to go against these pros. So when I go undrafted, MJ extends an invitation to me to play in this basketball camp that they're putting, a pickup game that they're putting together for a basketball camp that his buddy Fred Whitfield was doing over in Greensboro. So I jump at the opportunity, say, if I'm going to try to make it in the league, I got to play against NBA-style talent. So I jump in the car and I drive on over to Greensboro, and you get there and you think, okay, it's going to be this, all-star type game. You guys just pass the ball around. No one plays any defense, and you run and you dunk and you shoot threes. But when you get there, MJ gathers everybody, both teams in the locker before, and says, hey, if you're not here to compete, there's the door. You can leave. And I think sometimes I was quiet. I was ready to compete, but I think some guys were kind of like, well, are you serious? Like you're going to kick us out if we're not going to play hard? But he was dead serious. We approached that game like it was an NBA game. It was a physical game. Guys got hit with elbows. Guys got knocked to the floor. Guys stepping in the lanes, taking charges, bumping guys. No easy layups. MJ, in fact, one year even got his eye busted, where he required him to leave the game and get stitches. So everyone thought, well, he's done. He's not coming back. Of course, in true MJ fashion, he does come back. But it was a game where I was able to compete well enough that I impressed MJ quite just enough to him to make a call to the general manager of the Chicago Bulls and say that you should give this guy a look-see. So that's how I got my first opportunity. They called my agent. I jumped on a plane to go to Chicago and got invited to the rookie camp that was out in California that year.
Well, you definitely showed up to compete, like MJ said, and then you continued to compete for 15 years in the NBA. What a great career. And 3 rings. I see you flashing. I know you have one on. I think you said that was your 92 ring.
Yeah,
Look
1992. It's funny. Everyone asks me if I just wear them all around day to day or whatever when I'm out for a run or whatever, and I'm like, no, they're just too big. They're too heavy. They're really not comfortable. But a special event like this, like Legends Live, of course, I had to come correct.
Thanks for showing up for us, Scott. I appreciate that. One thing that I do just want to show before we close is this great picture. I think this was from your 20th anniversary of 91. So this would have been a 2011 celebration. How much do you guys still keep in contact?
This was a great night because, I had my children, Benjamin and Ava, who are 18 and 17, much later than a lot of guys did. So they had heard all these stories for years, people coming up to me and congratulating on the championships or wanting to ask questions about Jordan and Pippen and all these guys over the years. They didn't really understand what it all meant. So this event, I was able to take them back with, and they got to understand a little bit about what Chicago basketball meant and what that first championship team meant to the city of Chicago, which was something really special because the Bulls, the city had never won a championship outside of the Bears winning it in football. The Cubs had done long ago back in 19 whatever 9, I think it was. So it was a long time coming for a team to win a championship. And we were happy to be that group that celebrated that championship and to get all those guys back together. I think PJ couldn't make it and BJ Armstrong couldn't make it, but to get everybody to come back and participate in something like that, what a special group it is. And being that I've been kind of around basketball for 30 years straight, whether it be college or pro level, I get to see a lot of these guys on the road. Pippen's still and Grant's still involved with the Bulls. Stacey King's their color commentator. So it's been really special to be able to see these guys over the years. I talked to BJ Armstrong on the phone earlier this week. So we try to keep in touch. It's a special group of guys, a special bond that we like to try to keep that fire and passion and love for one another that we share.
It sounds like a really great fraternity, and maybe BJ will ask you to pop on his post the Last Dance podcast. You can be a guest there. So Scott, I would really like to wrap up because we are really close to airtime for the Last Dance. I know you would really like to get back into coaching and especially on the collegiate level, but what is Scott Williams, the 3-time NBA champ, doing now?
I would like. I've been doing broadcasting at the college level for Grand Canyon University, where Dan Marley's been the head coach for years. Just replaced this year by Bryce Drew. That's very excited to be around those college kids. I'd like to have an opportunity to do that and exploring those opportunities now. But I've been working on my own little documentary as well. It's about the game that I spoke briefly about. It's called The World's Greatest Pickup Game, and I got a little clip that I brought with me, and so we'll roll out to that. But thanks to Legends Live. Thank you, Bridget Gannon, for having me on the show. It's been a blast, and I can't wait to check out episodes 3 and 4 on ESPN of The Last Dance.
Well, thank you again for joining us on this special edition of Legends Live. Be sure to tune into our next episode on Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific for a great conversation between NBA champions Shawn Marion and Caron Butler. Until then, be well and enjoy The Last Dance.
Scott Williams, take one.
Okay, I gotta laugh. Sorry. That's the first time anybody's ever done that one.
This guy can help us.
He was one of my favorite teammates.
He plays with a lot of passion, a lot of emotion.
His shoulder pops out. But we knew Scott was going to play him and that raggedy shoulder.
He overcame incredible odds.
He had a lot of fighting.
And always got a smile on his face.
We couldn't play without Scott.
Bringing that leadership to it.
The guy they thought wasn't going to make it.
Playing for Dean Smith.
3 NBA championships.
Never judge a book by its cover. If you did, you underestimate Scott.
I was just the guy next to the guy in a lot of those teams. But I'll tell you, there's not a day goes by that someone doesn't recognize me and say, hey, champ. And that's a damn good feeling.